question, right?
It's a great
You can get
question.
all this NBA talent, but you're not hanging as many banners as we expect you to.
Well, Cal does have a banner, though.
He does, yes.
Yeah, long time ago, but yes.
But that was always the knock on him from Kentucky fans is, look at all this NBA talent you have. Why aren't we winning more championships?
Age-old question with guys like Calipari, and I remember doing it with Urban Meyer when I was in Florida at the University of Florida. Well, when he was at the University of Florida. What is the job of a college coach? Is it to win as many games as possible or make as many millionaires as possible? And I know the answer is yes, but that's what you're talking about with Shire, right?
Here's the thing. If you're trying to win as many games as possible, having talent that can go to the NBA is a good thing. And if you're making guys a lot of money in the NBA, then that's a great billboard for you in terms of recruiting guys to come to your college program, right? Coach Cal has, what, $6 billion in NBA contracts under his belt? Think about that.
That's crazy.
I mean, just imagine what that's doing for the GDP. Coach Cal is amazing in terms of getting guys paid.
Yeah.
And John Shire seems like he's following along that same path.
And not only to get guys paid, but when you're recruiting guys, you say, look at our alumni base that's in the league that you can use as a resource. These are connections that you're going to have as you attempt to position yourself to get to the next level, and that's enticing as well.
So, no doubt. And the fallout, though, now still is around Ace Bailey, the stud forward out of Rutgers who goes to the Utah Jazz. And Brian Windhorst, senior NBA writer, Hoop Collective podcast with Bontemps and McMahon, had this to say last night about the latest with Ace Bailey and the Jazz on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt.
He very clearly was trying to guide himself to certain places in the draft, and he very clearly didn't have Utah on that list. Now, Jonathan Givony reported earlier that at least one of the teams in the top 5 was told, and maybe more than one, but we know at least one was told, if you draft my client, he is not going to report. Okay, he did not go to Utah today. Walter Clayton, their other first-round draft pick, did go to Utah today. Now, the Jazz have said that's not an issue. They allow their players to go, their new players to go home. But he will be expected to be there on Monday when their summer league training camp begins. So let's see. But one thing I will tell you with confidence, Danny Ainge and his son Austin are not going to bend here. They are not going to get pushed around. They do not care with what the situation might bring. So the idea that they are going to pressure the Jazz into something I don't think will be successful for Ace Bailey and his operation. But let's see how the next 72 hours plays out.
As usual, Windy with great detail and great storytelling. I want to focus in, guys, on the Jonathan Givony part, our draft expert and now an analyst, that he brought up. That he told, according to the report, is that he told one of the teams in the top 5, do not draft me. We are unaware of who that team is.
Right.
Thus, we are not sure it's definitely not Utah.
It's in play.
So is there a chance this is not over? I will continue to ask that question. Like, what do we need to see to make us believe Ace Bailey is going to be playing for the Utah Jazz and this whole thing is going to be clean?
I don't know. I can't say with any degree of certainty that it is over, which is fascinating in and of itself. But when it comes to trying to get your pro career off to the best of starts, Ace Bailey is doing himself no favors.
You would have wanted him there yesterday.
Well, yeah, I would have wanted him there yesterday. Regardless of how you feel about the team that drafted you, they own your rights. And beyond that, the optics of the situation are just terrible because now you are in the spotlight and there is going to be an inordinate amount of pressure on you. Even though you're a top 5 pick and it comes with the spotlight in and of itself, there's going to be so much more pressure on you based on how you handled the pre-draft process and based on all of the rumblings that we're hearing after the Utah Jazz selected you with the 5th overall pick. Think about all the smoke that Eli Manning got early on in his career before he exercised the demons in 2007 and winning a championship. I mean, there were so many naysayers, some internally with the Giants organization, former players, Tiki Barber amongst them, and a lot externally. So if you're Ace Bailey and you want to get your career off to the best start, you want to be able to wow folks and fascinate fans over the first 3 years, leading to a huge rookie extension, the sentiment around you coming into the NBA has not been positive. And it's not moving you in the direction that you ultimately want to go in. So this is one of those scenarios. You can make some noise before the draft, but making noise after the draft doesn't serve your purpose.
No. And until we see him in the building, we're going to assume that this is intentional.
Yes.
And that this is a continuation of the thought process and the plan that he and his representation had prior to the draft. They know what they're doing. They know that he was the big story heading into the draft. They know that our show and everyone else in the sports ether is talking about his 3 preferred destinations and the fact that he didn't land in one. And when their other draft pick and Walter Clayton Jr. is there and he's not, and these reports are out there, how could we not all speculate that maybe he doesn't want to be there despite what he said and the immediacy of being drafted and despite what's coming out of Utah about the communication that they had after he was drafted? I don't know how they would think anything else other than we are going to speculate that he's going to sit out or try to force his way out of there by him not showing up when his other peer did.
So just to go through the top 5, he knew he wasn't going to Dallas, so he couldn't call them and say, I'm not interested. It would be basketball malpractice if you called Greg Popovich and said, I'm okay. I'm sorry, what? You wouldn't want... So we know it's not the Spurs.
Yeah.
It's one of the next 3. The next 3 would be Philadelphia, who traditionally has been historically pretty good in basketball, not recently. Charlotte, that's been a disaster, as we know.
Awful.
And Utah, who had a pretty good history, just not recently, but with a lot of names that you're aware of that run a team. I know I've been praising Danny Ainge. He's a good executive, whatever. I think he's a little overrated. I got to own that. I should have brought that up yesterday. But the reality is, it's one of those 3 teams. It's Philadelphia, it's Charlotte, or it's Utah. So what we're saying is there's a chance the phone call was made from his representation to the Utah Jazz. Like, it could be them.
It's weird. It's weird because all 3 of those teams present different scenarios, different situations for Ace Bailey, right? There is no theme, there is no through line as to why he disqualified him. There's no consistency with that.
I think that's the best point, by the way.
We've got reports out there that he didn't show up for the workout with the Philadelphia 76ers because the Sixers were non-committal in terms of guaranteeing that they're going to draft him with the 3rd overall pick. So I just think that's weird in and of itself. The Charlotte Hornets, okay, I get it. There's a player that they drafted with a higher pick that's a wing at your position, so maybe taking shots away from you early on in your career, not necessarily serving you in terms of getting to that huge rookie extension. The Utah Jazz just doesn't make any sense. It seems like there was a clear path to Ace Bailey being the face of the franchise for the Utah Jazz. All of the guys that they have there now that you could point to and say, hey, that's the person that's most identifiable with the franchise. We've been talking about trading those players, right? Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, those guys, we're talking about moving on from them. So it just doesn't make any sense. But now just looking at the situation, because of how noisy it has been and how noisy it will continue to be until he shows up in Utah, Ace Bailey is under more pressure than any pick that got taken in this year's draft. He's under more pressure going to Utah than Cooper Flagg is going to Dallas. Think about that for a second. We've been talking about Cooper Flagg for the last 3 years, the main event. And Ace Bailey, by how he's managed the pre-draft process and in the aftermath of getting taken by the Jazz, he's put himself under more pressure than Cooper Flagg, than Dylan Harper, than VJ Edgecombe, than Con Knipple. He's put himself under more pressure than all of those dudes. It is absolutely crazy to me to think that his representation thinks that this is serving him and getting him closer to where he wants to be, which is a huge extension after 3 years.
Yeah, you put yourself in a pretty precarious position by doing all of this leading up to you ever playing an NBA game. But does it make you think of Utah differently if they were the team? If Ace Bailey and his representation called them directly and said, don't pick us, I'm not coming there. We praised them yesterday saying, yeah, they didn't care. They drafted him anyway because they think he's the right fit, and they're going to essentially test his resolve in this way. But if it was one team that he said he's not going to, and it was them, and they called them and said that, knowing he didn't want to be there and they drafted anyway, does it change your mind at all?
Well, I need to see what happens. Like, okay, so let's, in this scenario, if they are the team and they're like, you know what, we don't care, we own the rights to the individual's basketball career, which they do, it becomes a bigger deal if he literally doesn't show up, right? Then it's like, then we're not praising them for just saying, hey, he's the best talent, and it's a disaster.
Well, it's a big difference between